Evening, Cherries fans, and welcome to this special opposition preview show here on Up the Cherries in All Departments. Before I welcome on my special guest, here's a little bit about our sponsors, Dental on the Banks. To find out what they can do for you, visit dentalonthebanks.co.uk. Now, following our defeat up at the Hawthorns, which was really disappointing, and our draw against Sheffield United, we host a Middlesbrough side who are just around the playoffs themselves. Being managed by Chris Wilder, who of course was in charge at Sheffield United before joining Middlesbrough, they do look like they will be a tough team to play against. However, they have recently been beaten by Fulham and also Hull City. To preview this match, I've got a very, very special guest. Somebody who actually wrote a book called Who's the Bastard in the Black? Also, this man was a referee at the highest level in the Premier League. He was also the referee for the 2004 FA Cup final between Manchester United and Millwall. It is a pleasure to welcome onto the show Jeff Winter. Afternoon, Jeff. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for agreeing to join us on this special show. So, if people don't realise you're a Middlesbrough fan, they do now, seeing as you got the scarf in the background as well. When did you start supporting the club?
Well, I was born and bred in Middlesbrough, so, from a very, very early age, I think I went to my first game. In those days, you didn't see 2 and 3 year olds walking the streets to games. I think I was about 8 when I went to my first game, and then followed them home and away until I took up the whistle. And then after refereeing career was over, started going back, and now I work for the club. I work on match days in the hospitality lounges, hosting the games, and as well as being a season ticket holder at Ibrox. So I see more football now than I did when I was refereeing. But Boro were my first love, and as frustrating as it is to support a team that isn't one of the ones that wins things all the time, it's sort of in your blood. You're there, thick and thin, and there's been a lot of thin following Middlesbrough, I can assure you.
Well, as you mentioned there and touched on, you started as a referee at an early age. How did you find going to grounds across the country rather than, as it was at the time, Ayresome Park and then the Riverside?
Well, I mean, the most difficult thing when you start refereeing, you obviously don't start in the Premier League. You start on the parks and gardens, doing kids' games and pub team games. And the most difficult thing was, shortly after I'd started refereeing, I was doing Sunday games and still going to watch the Boro. And at the start of the following season, somebody got in touch with me and give me some fixtures. Oh, wait a minute, I go to the Boro on a Saturday. And that was the difficult thing, breaking away, you know, and just refereeing locally and not being with the lads on the terraces. But hindsight's a wonderful thing. And it was probably one of the best decisions I made in my life, because I certainly wasn't going to grace Wembley and Premier League grounds as a footballer. I wanted to, but a distinct lack of ability got in my way. So refereeing was a path that I took, and, you know, went through the system. For those who don't know, people think, you know, they say, oh, referees, they think they just turn up as in the Premier League or in the Football League. It's a long, hard apprenticeship, because there's over 30,000 qualified referees in the country. So to get into the top 20 on the Premier League doesn't happen overnight. So you break away. I mean, obviously, with a lot of midweek games, you could still go and watch professional games. But then, you know, when I eventually got promoted and got into the professional game, it's your career. So I'd go to games, Boro games, when I wasn't refereeing, like I say, midweek games. But I missed quite a lot, because, you know, towards the end of my career, for once, Middlesbrough got successful and were playing in Europe. You know, so I missed out on some trips, but I'm making up for that now by following Rangers around Europe. So belatedly, I started a football fan, became a referee, and ended up a football fan. So not a bad package.
What was the link to Rangers?
Oh, blimey, I go back to liking Jim Baxter as a kid. You know, great footballer. And then when you get into the scene in Glasgow, and, you know, you're either one or the other, aren't you? And I certainly wasn't going to be one of the other lot. And I used to go up and watch Rangers play in the 90s when Ali McCoist, Mark Hateley were playing, mostly, again, midweek games. So more often than not, it was the European games. But then after I finished refereeing, started going up and went all round the lower leagues when Rangers, you know, were put down into the bottom division. So Monday nights at Arbroath and Wednesday nights up at Ross County, you know, a nice, like, 700-mile round trip to get to football. All good stuff. And season ticket holder now up there. And fortunately, over the last few years, you know, until COVID came along, Rangers were tended to play Thursday nights in Europe and Sundays, whereas Middlesbrough were playing Tuesdays, Wednesdays and Saturdays. So, you know, most weeks through the football season, I'd be going to 4 games and seeing all the Rangers games and all the Middlesbrough games. So it worked well for me.
Of course, let's move on to when you become a referee. Is there any one game that really does stand out for you?
Well, there's a lot of games. I mean, I loved refereeing. I mean, even when I was on the Premier League, if I didn't have a game one weekend, I'd referee a local Parks and Gardens game, or midweek I'd be doing college games. So, you know, the thing about referees, good, bad or indifferent, without a referee, you ain't got a game of football. But, you know, through my professional career, you've got to say the biggest game was getting the FA Cup final, albeit, you know, it wasn't the best game of football during my career. It is the highlight. You know, because not too many people get the opportunity to referee the cup final. During my days on the Premier League, though, you know, it's funny, a couple of years ago during COVID, they were showing different football games on a Saturday night and highlights from down the years. And they showed the Tottenham-Manchester United game where Tottenham were 3-0 up at half-time at White Hart Lane, and Man United won the game 5-3 in the end. And that was probably one of the highlights in terms of unpredictability, you know, excitement and everything else. But there was many more, you know, Sol Campbell's first game back at White Hart Lane for Arsenal against Spurs. That was probably one of the most, well, I can't think of a nice word to describe it, one of the nastiest atmospheres I've ever officiated in front of, because, you know, it was just pure hatred that day. from the home supporters, you know, to their former player. But down the years, it's now looking back and the memories. And when you talk to someone like yourself, you recall big games, big occasions. But life goes on, you know. Now I go as a fan to watch games. I go to host hospitality lounges at games. But the one thing you find is once a referee, always a referee, because any decision out there on the pitch, people will be, if not having a go at me, questioning me. And I'm like going, it's bugger all to do with me. You know, I'm not the referee, but you're all the same. You know, why is he given that? You know, and the thing is, people, I still watch a game when I'm supporting a team, but I've got my referee's eyes on. So, you know, you'll see a foul, you'll see something occur against the team you're supporting. And it's as clear as, you know, black and white to me, absolutely crystal clear. But fans don't see it that way. They just see it through the eyes of the team they support. You know, I said to someone up at Ibrox a couple of weeks ago, I said, do you realise they'd have had 17 players booked if you would have been the referee? Because every time a Rangers player's fouled, yellow card, yellow card. You know, not every foul's a yellow card, but then that's the beauty of football. Fans don't go to a game to be neutral. I've probably got the ability to be a fan, but retain that sort of little bit of neutrality and fair play, because football fans aren't interested in fair play. They're just interested in their team winning.
Yep, very much so. And of course, going to that 2004 FA Cup final, as a player, you would have to psych yourself up for every single game. As a referee, do you feel the same sort of pressure?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have some nerves before a game, you don't perform, and that's the same for players as it is for match officials. Some games, you mentioned the FA Cup final. Well, if you can't get yourself psyched up to be involved in an FA Cup final, you don't deserve to be in an FA Cup final. Some games, some occasions, it's far more difficult to psych yourself up for. You know, if you've got a end of season, almost testimonial type game, you know, 13th versus 14th in the division, they're not getting promoted, they're not getting relegated, nothing at stake, then you can tend to come down a little, as indeed the players do. But, you know, if you've got a derby game or a top of the table clash, a cup tie, then you've got to be psyched up. And if you're not psyched up, I don't think you're going to perform. And that's no different for a referee to a player.
Was there any players or managers that you found more difficult to referee or manage? And what would you say your favourite and least favourite ground would be?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're talking about human beings. We're talking about characters, and some people you could. In my day, I mean, I wouldn't last 5 minutes as a referee in the present day football, because you know the referees, the mic'd up, and you know everybody can hear and lip read. That's why everybody speaks like this nowadays. Because in my day, you didn't need to. You could just talk to the players as human beings, and they would swear and you would swear. I think nowadays a referee that was adopting that approach and giving the players a little bit back would probably be out the door. But in terms of players, you know who your opponents are. You know, if Bournemouth are playing Middlesbrough this week, and the Bournemouth manager will be talking to the Bournemouth players about the Middlesbrough players, where the threats come from, what tactics they employ, and you know how they line up and everything. Same thing's happening with Chris Wilder against your lads. The referee has got to be just the same. The referee's got to look at the flashpoints before the game. You know, if there's a player that's particularly naughty in the middle of the field for Bournemouth and Middlesbrough have got one, they're going to be in competition. going back to my generation, when you refereed, Man United versus Arsenal, you knew where the clashes, Vieira and Keane were going to be, Van Nistelrooy and Martin Keown. You knew the history, and as a referee, you would try and control that. Again, no different to life in general. There'll be people who you got on with. There's a lot of players now I get on really well with post-career, see them on the after-dinner speaking circuit and media opportunities that come along. And there's people you get on with. There's other people you don't. And there's other people you just can't stand the sight of. And that doesn't stop you as a referee being fair, being honest, giving the right decisions. Whether you'd want to go out for a pint with them is a totally different subject. In terms of grounds, funnily enough, I was at one of the grounds yesterday. I was doing some filming for some of the club sponsors at Anfield. And, Anfield and Goodison Park, where they were, they're changing. Obviously, Everton are going to move ground altogether, but Liverpool is unrecognisable from when I used to go there with the new stands. But those were old-fashioned football grounds where the crowd are very close to the pitch and the atmosphere was great. One of my favourite grounds, apart from those two, was White Hart Lane. And now I've been to the new White Hart Lane, or whatever it's not called now. And I don't think they've really just... Tottenham Stadium, isn't it, or something?
Yeah, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And I've been to the new one, and it's phenomenal. It's fantastic. But I used to love the old White Hart Lane. Again, the crowd were close to the pitch. Great atmosphere. And as referees, no doubt the same as players, you would have grounds where you'd always seem as if things went well. Now, White Hart Lane, probably one of the reasons I liked it, I tended to enjoy the games there, and the crowd weren't on your back because there was some classic encounters. On my way up, two grounds that spring to mind are Rochdale and Hull City, the old Boothferry Park. And it was just one of those, whenever you went there, you just had it in your mind. And I think subconsciously, that's probably why things went wrong, that whenever I went there, something would go wrong. There'd be controversy over a penalty and offside or whatever. And I remember refereeing at Hull one day, and I'm 89 minutes into the game, and the game's going, I think it was against Brentford, way back when. And, I thought, I've got out of it. I've got out of jail. I've broken the hoodoo. And then with a couple of minutes to go, Hull City are on the attack. There's an appeal for a free kick just outside the penalty area. I turn it down. The opposition turn over, get the ball, run down the field, score the winner in the last minute. So I was like 60 seconds away from breaking the hoodoo of not having a crap game at Hull, and still couldn't see it out. And Rochdale was another ground where something always seemed to happen. And players say the same. You hear the commentators talking about this player scored so many goals against Bournemouth, and a really out of sync number of goals. Played against Bournemouth 10 times and he scored 12 goals. The most goals he's scored against any other team is 5 or 6. So, players have their favourite grounds, favourite opponents. And I suppose referees, a referee would rather just be steady away in every game. They have good days and they have bad days.
Would you say that because the era that you refereed in, you had some big names, you had the Vinnie Jones, you had the Duncan Fergusons, the Dennis Wises, characters, real characters. Would you say that football's lost that to an extent?
I think it has. Looking at the industry I've been in for the last sort of 18 years, the after dinner speaking circuit, and you think of the characters that, even before that generation that are still entertaining on the circuit, and you see who's coming on now. Well, not many Premier League players, not many names, big names, are ever going to want to, or indeed need to, continue working after the football careers. And I don't have a day-to-day contact with professional footballers now, but on what you do see of them on the television, there doesn't appear to be the characters. And if there isn't the characters, there perhaps isn't going to be the stories. So maybe that golden era, I often say, and if occasionally when I bump into former referees, we didn't get the pay and the conditions that the present crop get. Just like players, players that were playing 20, 30 years ago, they weren't on £300,000 a week. But I tend to think, and this might sound like your granddad talking to you, but I tend to think we had the good times. There was banter on the pitch. If a player told you to F off, you could give him it back with a little bit of interest. Now, if a referee is seen to say anything untoward to a player, everyone's up in arms. So the game has changed for the better in many respects, but in others, I'm more than happy with having my career when I had my career. I think now with VAR and the what's expected of the match officials, it wouldn't fit with certainly the way I used to referee.
It's funny you mentioned VAR because that was going to be the thing that I was going to move on to. Are you for or against it?
I think it doesn't matter whether I'm for it or against it. It's here to stay. I always used to say when people were screaming out about, the referees make so many mistakes, which is actually not factually correct, and referees are costing managers the jobs. Another thing that is not factually correct, because the referee that gives a penalty or doesn't give a penalty in the final game of the season and costs that team promotion or gets that team relegated, what people find or forget is that over the previous 45 games of that championship season, the reason they didn't get promoted, the reason they got relegated wasn't because of one referee in the 89th minute of the final game. It was because of their inability to score goals, stop goals, and do everything else in the other 45 games. But, everybody used to clamour, we've got to have video technology. And I always used to say, be careful what you wish for. And I mean, the authorities over the first few years, or first 2 or 3 seasons of VAR, they just made absolute fools, not only of themselves, but they made fools of the referees, experienced, good match officials who were stood there in the centre circle with a face like, what the fucking hell? I don't know whether I can swear, but I have done now.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, if you've listened to me on Under the Cosh, then you know that sometimes it can get a bit fruity. But, you can see a referee just stood there going, what the fucking hell's going on here? And then he's waiting for someone to tell him this, that, and the other. I thought VAR was going to be brought in to help with decisions that where the referee was unsighted, players ran across him, where a player has cleverly handled the ball in front of his body where the officials couldn't see. But now we've got goals, wonderful goals being chalked off for millimetres for offside. And the worst thing, it's this, I mean, as Bournemouth fans, you've been up and you've been and down. But, I mean, since VAR came in, perhaps you haven't had too much experience of it in your games. Certainly Middlesbrough haven't. And a lot of the football I watch in Scotland and at lower league and non-league level, they don't. And the ball hits the net. There might be an appeal for an offside. There might be an appeal for a penalty or whatever. But the elation, the celebration and everything happens there and then. When you're in a ground where there's VAR and there's this sort of pregnant pause where, well, can I celebrate scoring the goal? And then everybody stood round. It doesn't matter whether it's 30 seconds or 3 minutes. It just, to me, takes away that, instant excitement of something happening in a game of football. It's surprising, though, that other countries seem to have got the head round VAR a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently than what we have done in this country. And the chopping and changing of what's a handball, what isn't a handball, and, you know, changing rules and laws halfway through a season, that's just left me frustrated and scratching my head. But their personal views, it's here to stay. And it's almost turning the referees into the robots that some people in authority wanted. There's a referee retiring in a couple of weeks' time, Mike Dean, a real character. You know, he's a football fan with a referee's top on, and he lives, sleeps, and breathes the game of football. He's the last of our original crop of full-time referees in this country. And I don't think, unfortunately, we'll ever see the like again. They don't want characters. They don't want personalities. They just want straight down the middle. Not my way, but it's the way for the future. So it doesn't really matter what I think. We're going to be stuck with this sanitized game of football. And fortunately, when you look back within the last 7 days and you look at the Man City Liverpool game and see the excellence that was on show there, then, you know, the game is still beautiful. This game's still wonderful. But unfortunately, not every game's like that. And sometimes at the end of a game, we're spending more time talking about referees' decisions now with VAR there than we used to do before, because there was an acceptability that referees aren't, you know, perfect. They will not see everything. They will get some things wrong. And the game just flowed. Now we're dissecting it and it's becoming sanitized. And, you know, I can't get my head around the offside scenario. What they're doing is right, is correct by the letter of the law. But you tell me anybody who wants a great goal ruling out for an inch or even less than an inch. To me, the old days, going back way before even I started refereeing, where there had to be daylight between an attacker and a defender. I think, you know, defenders might not agree with me, but we don't go to a game on a Saturday afternoon wanting a 0-0 draw. We want to see goals, and ruling goals off for millimetres. I haven't got my head around that, and I don't think I ever will.
To be honest, I'm in the camp where I wish VAR wasn't here. To be fair, you know, referees, some referees could make mistakes, but at the end of the day, that's football to me.
And the forwards make mistakes. I mean,
exactly.
The team you're playing on Good Friday, Middlesbrough would have won the league by a country mile if they could score goals, and the goalkeeper didn't let shots in. But hang on a minute, there's 23 other teams in the championship could all say the same thing. The game isn't about perfection. It's about, there's human error. You know, players don't hit the back of the net every time they have a shot. Goalkeepers don't save, and, you know, don't save every shot, and occasionally drop crosses, etc. There's so many imperfections. The sad thing is, not sad thing, just a fact of life, is that referees' mistakes will be highlighted. And, you know, a player on Friday that doesn't have a very good game but pops up and scores a winner in the 89th minute is a hero. The referee who's put in a virtually faultless performance and then gets a major decision wrong in the 89th minute, he's ridiculed and he's useless and he should be demoted and worse from the fans. But that's life, isn't it? That's football. It's not about perfection.
Seeing as it is here and here to stay, what one change would you make to VAR?
Well, I think the offside. I've already mentioned it, so I'm sort of repeating myself. But I'd like to go back to a daylight situation. That to be offside, the attacker has to be, you know, there's daylight between the attacker and the defender who's alongside of him. The only other things I would do, not really VAR related, but I don't know why in football, where the technology we've got, I don't know why we don't adopt the sort of basketball, ice hockey, rugby league type scenario of the clock, the watch. We still have the arguments and people, not knowing when the referee's going to blow the whistle. And there's still, even the commentators now, they can't get. The referee said 3 minutes, and we've played nearly 4, and it's a minimum of 3 minutes. Unfortunately, when the guy puts his little board up, it doesn't say 3 minutes 32 seconds. It says a minimum of 3 minutes. So if a ball goes into the net in 3 minutes 59, that's fine. But people can't get their head round that, especially managers when they've lost. So why the hell we don't just have a stadium clock that's linked to someone in the stand that's pressing an on-off button? That would take away a major talking point, I think. The only thing is, if you actually, I watch a lot of football because I'm quite busy. I'll come in and the game kicks off. There'll be a game on the telly tonight, kicking off at 8 o'clock, European game. And by the time I've had something to eat and sat down, might be 8:30. I'll put it on Sky Plus, fast forward through every time the ball's out. And you can turn a 90-minute game of football in 15 minutes at half time. So there's sort of the best part of 2 hours of your night gone. If you sit down to watch the game half an hour after it starts and fast forward through all the stoppages and half time, you can get that game down to about 70 minutes. Now, if we were going to have true timekeeping on a game, then I think 45 minutes each half would go out the window. Otherwise, you'd be coming out of Dean Court at 11 o'clock on a midweek game. So I think independent timekeeping, where the players know, the fans know, the managers know, everybody knows. There's the stadium clock. It's stopped. It's restarted, and they know exactly how long's left. The only other thing I'd like to see involved, and the argument used to be, well, there's only one set of laws of the game, and the laws of the game are for all levels of football. Well, that's rubbish, because you don't have VAR in Division 1 and Division 2. You have VAR if a Premier League club is playing at home in the FA Cup. You don't have VAR if they're playing away in the FA Cup. So they've already proved that the way the games are managed and the laws of the game are different for different levels. And at the highest level, I'd like to see sin bins, because, I think that would improve behaviour. It would also, on the day, mean that if somebody has committed a bad offence or a combination of offences, the opposition get the benefit, not 5 games down the line when the player has now been cautioned 5 times and gets a suspension and he misses out against different opposition. I think the sort of instant punishment, again, going back to rugby league, that happens there where they get 10 minutes in the sin bin, I think that would help behaviour on the football pitch. And at the highest level, there is enough sort of people there to monitor it. Very difficult to do that on Parks and Gardens, where you've got one referee, no assistant referees, and somebody's got to be keeping a check of who's gone off and how long they're off. But at the highest level, I like to see that come in. But other aspects of VAR, there are times, somebody, whether it's a man in Stockley Park, if indeed Stockley Park exists, or is it just a fictitious place in another world? We should all do that. We should all go for a day out at Stockley Park. But somebody somewhere's got to make the decision. Now, whether it's a man on the pitch. Now, I have no experience of this, but I find it sort of confusing that I'm refereeing that game of football. I've got to sell decisions, and they're not my decisions. So, I find that very, very difficult. The referee, yes, he can get help and get guidance. And again, after a couple of seasons of the referee not going across to the screen, he now goes across to the screen. I'm just waiting for the time that the referee goes across to the screen, looks at it and says, no, I was right. I'm not changing my mind, because now when a ref goes across to the screen, we all know, don't we? We all know that penalty is going to be overturned, or the goal's going to be offside or not offside, whatever the case. And then the referee's got to sell those decisions to players. Well, you didn't think it was a penalty. And then the next time the referee makes a decision, I would imagine the player, are you sure you got the last one wrong? You know, I'm sure that sort of banter is going on out there on the pitch. So I'm with you. I'm not the greatest fan, but I don't think it matters what you and I think. It doesn't matter what all the other hundreds of thousands of fans think. Those in power have decided it, and I think it's here to stay.
I think it has been managed a lot better in the Euros, in the World Cup as well. I'm gonna put you on the spot actually about a situation that happened when we was last in the Premier League. And if you know anything about our game with Burnley, this was the game where Burnley were attacking, and Adam Smith was adjudged to have handled the ball, but it wasn't picked up by the referee at the time. We went through up the other end and made it 1-1. However, because of VAR, that was pulled back about 3 minutes later for a penalty to Burnley. So both our goal was chalked off, and we went 2-0 down because they scored. Mm. Surely there's got to be a time limit on how long that decision can be.
Before VAR was ever introduced, when I started doing the circuit and speaking, I used to tell exactly the same story. I used to flower it up a little bit for effect. And it wasn't Bournemouth, with respect to Bournemouth and Burnley, which was a vital game to you two teams. But I would sort of, for effect, turn it into Liverpool versus Man City, Rangers versus Celtic, Tottenham versus Arsenal, and have a penalty turned down by the referee at one end of the field. And 10 seconds later, the referee gives a penalty at the other end of the field. And then somebody in your ear says, and to sort of over-elaborate the point, I'm sending the player off. Last man, denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity as the attackers ran into the penalty area. I've sent him off, given the penalty. Then a little voice. By this time, it's only 20, 25 seconds after the first challenge. And then the referee has got a little voice in his ear saying it was a penalty at the other end. So you've got to sheepishly beckon the player who you've just sent off back onto the field, walk to one end of the field to the other, and give the opposition a penalty. And I used to sum it up with the use of two words: fucking riot. Because, if it was a major game, you can imagine the effect of the crowd. And, in a big derby match or a vital cup tie or whatever. And I just thought, yeah, you want the right decisions all the time, but think it through. And, you've come up with an example there in that particular game that's gone against you and has changed the result. Possibly and probably people will turn around and say, well, that was the right course of action because it was a handball at the other end. But, how long? I mean, nowadays they say you can't go back, because you could literally be going back. If the ball sometimes doesn't go out of play, as you say, for minutes. I don't think we've ever had one where, the referee has had to wait that they've had to wait that long for a decision to be made after the game was stopped. But, for the game to be in play and continuing, and then somebody comes back and says you've got to amend it at the other end. I mean, that's just farcical, isn't it? Yeah. And, I use the words something riot. I wonder what the local police force and the security and stewards will be thinking of, because the minute that decision's made, if it's in a massive game, there's going to be a reaction in the stands. So I think you and I have convinced ourselves we don't like VAR. The other people saying, well, and I listen to the pundits now, and some of them saying, well, we got the right decision in the end. But it just takes away something from the game for me, the continuity, the entertainment, the excitement, the thrill of scoring a goal. That's been taken away now. Yes, help referees when it's needed, but we seem as if we're splitting hairs over things. And I come back to my original point, offside being the major example. But everybody accepts that because the law of the... But then, surely they'd have been better getting the width of the line and everything sorted out rather than they just jumped into it. And then we were getting, honestly, people were sort of saying, if you cut your toenails on a morning, you put a pair of size 10s on instead of 10 and a halves, it would have been a goal, and that to me, it's not football, but I'm talking about the dim and distant days when I was a lad. It is football now.
Going back to decisions you made, was there ever a time when you come off the pitch after a match and you thought, I don't know if I made the right decision there, or when you made a decision, did you stick with it?
Well, you have to stick with it, unless somebody is there, as in nowadays VAR, or you've had a flag from your assistant referee saying he was offside or there was a handball or something. You've got to stick with it because you've given it because that's how you saw it or that's how you thought it was. Did you ever come off a pitch thinking, did I make a mistake? Of course you did. Usually there is a telltale sign. I mean, you can't always trust players, to be telling you the truth. And you can't always trust fans because fans have got a vested interest in a decision going one way or the other. But there is sort of something that goes through your mind after a decision. You're thinking, God, did I get that one wrong? But if you continue to dwell on that decision that you may or may not have got wrong in the 10th minute, then I can tell you, if you're dwelling on that decision, you're going to make an even bigger boob in the 20th, 30th, 40th minute because you've lost concentration and you've just got to put that to bed because, if you've given the penalty and they've scored and it's 1-0, there's nothing you can do to change that. So it doesn't, at that moment of time, with the rest of the game to continue, it doesn't really matter whether you've got it right or wrong because you've got to referee the rest of the game. Not very nice when you watch Match of the Day on the night when you get home and, everybody can see that you've got it wrong. But then even nowadays, when you're looking at decisions, a player goes down in the penalty area and they are showing it from various angles, slow motion. And some of the time, it depends which angle you're looking from, which camera angle. Oh, he did handle the ball. From another camera angle, it doesn't look like it did. It came off his thigh. And, a referee hasn't got 360-degree vision. Neither does an assistant referee. He can't see everything that's going round a player's body. Someone has got to make an honest decision, and the referee in charge that day makes an honest decision and has got to stand or fall by it. I think, you were turning around now and saying you'd rather there wasn't VAR. Well, think back to Bournemouth versus Burnley this season, final day of the season, and a decision goes against you that could have, in that final game, the difference between 3 points and no points could be the difference between you going up or not. Then it depends who you're supporting, doesn't it? Because if you're a Bournemouth fan and the decision's gone against you, you're saying we should have VAR. Why have they got VAR in the Premier League and in the playoff final that says the £120 million match? Why is there no VAR in that? But then if you're the fan of the team, that you're playing against, they're not bothered about VAR. And then next season, when a decision goes for you or goes against you, you're slagging VAR. you think, well, hang on a minute, I was happy to go with it when it went in my favour. So you've got to take the rough with the smooth. But it's a talking point. I mean, I always used to say about VAR, if you sanitize the game totally, take away all the talking points, that when we go to the pub after the match, what is there to talk about? You know, your opinion, was it a penalty? My opinion, that it was or wasn't. We can't have that conversation because it's all been sanitized. The trouble is, now with VAR, I think we're arguing more about decisions, was it or wasn't it, than we were before. So has it really worked? On some occasions, yes. Maybe some might say on the majority of occasions, yes. But the downside is the game being stopped, you know, and the lack of excitement, the thrill of scoring a goal, and all the other problems we've got. So the jury's out, but I don't think it matters what you, I, or anyone else thinks. It's here to stay.
Well, I'm pleased we haven't got in the championship, but if we do go up, we will end up having it back. But moving on to the game on Friday, Chris Wilder's done a very good job actually there at Middlesbrough. Of course, Aitor Karanka did a fantastic job of getting Middlesbrough back into the Premier League, albeit for one season. Can you see what the job that Wilder's doing mirroring that of what Karanka was doing?
Oh no, nothing like what Karanka was doing. Karanka, this is football, isn't it? Do you want to be entertained? Do you want to watch attacking football, or do you just want to win? Now, nobody can argue that Karanka did get us promotion. When he got us promotion, he then set his stall out to draw 0-0 in every single game. And whether that would have been enough points to keep us up, I don't know, but it was horrendous. He played good footballers, good attacking players on the wing, and I'm not a Karanka fan. Karanka split the Middlesbrough public, but he did achieve promotion, which at the end of the day is what it's all about. Chris Wilder, you've missed a couple out in between there. You know, we went through the Tony Pulis, so it wasn't exactly fun to be watching Middlesbrough style of football. And then you got Neil Warnock, the man with more excuses. And, you know, even the Boro fans, Neil Warnock is a genius. He plays the public, he plays the media like a violin. He's brilliant. It's always somebody else's fault. And even the Middlesbrough fans, the referee will get the blame for that today, because it was always somebody else's fault. Chris Wilder's come in with the same players and has got a tune out of them. We weren't expecting promotion this season. In fact, early on in the season, we were more worried about the bottom of the league. He's got them playing, but this squad will be unrecognisable to the squad that Middlesbrough will have next season. Certainly if they were in the Premier League, but even if they're going to be challenging for promotion next season, I think Chris Wilder will bring his own players in. But he's made the club, you know, good to watch. The fans have really bought into Wilder. The away support is phenomenal. We sell out everywhere we go. You know, Bournemouth, it's only a 650-mile round trip, but I think we've got 1,400 tickets in your ground on Friday. They were sold in a matter of hours. And in fact, on recent away numbers travelling, if we'd have had 3 or 4 times that number of tickets that have been sold. So the fans are firmly, you know, behind the manager, behind the club. But the team, well, the league table tells the story. We'd won 8 games on the bounce at home, had a few very poor performances away from home, and then we've lost 2 on the bounce at home and gone from being probably one of the favourites to be in the playoffs now to be sort of teetering on the edge, and Bournemouth away and Huddersfield at home on Monday. You know, if win both of them and happy days, lose both of them, and you think we're not going to be in the playoffs. But the fans will come, they'll get behind the team, there'll be plenty of noise, but Middlesbrough's problem is they don't score enough goals. And it's been a problem for many a long year. So having said this, we might go to Bournemouth and win 3-0 on Friday, but you don't want that to happen, do you?
No, but then again, Jeff, I wouldn't put it past you, considering we're a little bit on the dodgy side at the moment against Bristol City.
Forest, I mean, you've still got to play Forest, and that.
Yeah.
I mean, Middlesbrough have beaten Forest home and away this season. So if Middlesbrough ended up in the playoffs and were playing Forest, you would have your money on Forest, because it's not often you beat a team 3 times in one season. But it might just be a little bit of jitters. You've got goal scorers and you've got good attacking players. I think Bournemouth should get over the line, but because if they don't, the big fear is that team that loses the second spot quite often don't go through on the playoffs, do they? The momentum's gone, and Middlesbrough had the momentum coming into the playoffs, coming into the end of the season. They've lost that in 2 home games in 4 days, and Forest seem to be the ones that are flying at the moment. So it's whether they've left their run on the top 2 too late. We'll probably know a lot more after the Easter fixtures.
If Middlesbrough do fail to make the playoffs, will of course the Boro fans will be disappointed, but would you be encouraged, considering the progress that has been made this season, that Wilder could go one better and even look at the automatic places the following season?
Most people, most fans, weren't expecting under Warnock, under his style of football and his management and everything, nobody was expecting Middlesbrough to go up this season. Indeed, like I said, sort of September, October time, there was more fears about the other end of the table. Chris Wilder is a totally different person, and I'd have confidence that we would be there or thereabouts next season. And Middlesbrough aren't ready for the Premier League. I would turn around and say, and you'd probably be honest enough to admit, Bournemouth and Fulham and Forest are not ready for the Premier League. The yo-yo effect. I mean, when you watch Manchester City Liverpool last weekend, what are we watching in the Championship? It's competitive, it's exciting. You never know what the score's going to be. But in terms of top quality, let's be honest, that's why those clubs are in the Championship, or indeed the lower reaches of the Premier League. We didn't expect it, but then when you're that close, you're going to take it, aren't you? And, from the club's point of view, to get on the financial merry-go-round, even if you've got to come down, go up, the West Brom sort of style approach over a period, then getting stronger slowly and slowly. But there's getting stronger, and then there's competing with the top 4 or 5. And, there are some fans that think, well, is it better to be in an exciting Championship where, you win one, you lose one, you win one, you lose one, but you've got a chance of promotion, so you're winning more games than you're losing, or being in the Premier League, knowing that when you go to City, Liverpool, Chelsea, etc., you're probably going to get a good hiding. But it's the only place to be. You want to be at like a referee wants to be refereeing at the highest level. Fans and players want to be at the highest level. But the gulf, as each season goes by, the gulf, I mean, I know you get £100-odd million for getting promoted, but that doesn't buy you it doesn't buy you a goal scorer that's going to guarantee you 30 goals a season, is it?
No, exactly. And when you look at the teams that went up last year, of course, Norwich won the league. Watford went up just behind them.
They were superb in the Championship, and look what's happened to them. I would say now, I mean, I saw Fulham play at the Riverside last week, and obviously there's another perfect example of Mitrovic scoring 40 goals in the Championship. Nobody expects him to get 10 next season in the Premier League because, you know, the gulf in class as a forward, that extra half yard of pace, he's you know, defenders are that much better. He's not going to get those opportunities. And I would say Fulham, Bournemouth, indeed anyone who goes up this season, they're going to be, well, we all know they're going to be the favourites to come straight back down, unless, you know, some sugar daddy comes in with, we used to say 50 million, but 50 million's not enough. You know,
Yep.
Sheffield United, Chris Wilder spent 50 million on 2 forwards, and one of them went about 18 months before he scored, Brewster, and the Scottish lad up front that they spent all that money on, and, you know, £25 million to a Bournemouth or a Middlesbrough is a phenomenal outlay, but it doesn't buy you guaranteed success. So, but it'll be lovely to be there, and if I had to put money on it now, I'd say obviously Bournemouth are far more likely to be in the Premier League next season than Middlesbrough, but who knows? Hopefully it could work for both of us, and we might be having a similar conversation before the league game. Dare I say, a relegation battle next season.
Yeah, no doubt, and hopefully, fingers crossed. You know, it'll be good fun to do this again. Finally, before I ask you for your prediction, you did write a book some time ago, back in 2006, wasn't it?
2006, yeah.
Yep, which was called "Who's the Bastard in the Black?" How fun was it doing that?
There was asterisks on it. You couldn't have that out. How did you work that out? Well, it was going to be a Winter's Tale, which was, you know, fairly sedate and probably predictable. But then no, it was the publishers that came up. They wanted something a little bit more punchy, and it worked well. And until COVID made the publishing industry have a long, hard look at you know, what stock they had in warehouses. And when COVID was, well, it's not over, is it? But when we got back to some life of normality, and I tried to get some more printed, they weren't still printing a book that was sort of all that many years old, because on the after dinner speaking circuit, you know, I could still, especially when people were full of alcohol, I could convince them that it would be nice for them to take a signed copy home. But it was fun. It was, what was the most enjoyable thing about it was going back and sort of getting the notes from my career, and at the time reminiscing, hey, I forgot about that game, or I forgot about that incident. But it was good fun. And, you know, over the years, especially in most people's books, they're on the shelves for a couple of years and then that's it. But with me being on the speaking circuit, you'll find that quite a lot of the speakers have got books that still go along to the events they're at. So, you know, many years after the book was actually published, sales were still occurring. But well, it's not going to happen, but I was going to say I'm going to have to write another one. No, I think my tale was told, and now I'm just enjoying myself.
Fair enough. Well, hopefully, fingers crossed, you won't enjoy yourself too much on Friday, but I'm sure you feel differently. How do you reckon it's going to go?
Well, there's 3 excuses to enable me to sit on the fence here. One, as you're probably well aware yourself, you can forecast or you can have a punt on results, scores at any level of football. But A, you don't do it on your own team. B, you most definitely don't do it in the Championship. Hand on heart, I would think you've probably got too much for Middlesbrough on Friday. But Bournemouth have had a tendency at home. I mean, they've been going a goal down in quite a lot of the games recently, haven't they? And sort of had to come from behind, which at least they've had the ability to come from behind. But from Middlesbrough's point of view, if we lose at your place, the pressure is then totally on for the Huddersfield game on Monday. Because if we lost both of those games, I think that is goodbye and good night. Can I keep on talking and waffling because I don't have to make a prediction? Is it a heart one or a head one? My head says that Bournemouth will win because our defence hasn't been brilliant. My heart is just hoping that we can get something from the game. And, of the 2 games over the weekend, if we could get 4 points out of 6, I know everybody wants 6 out of 6. If we get 4 out of 6, I think our playoff push would be back on. And I don't care how those points come. So prediction, I'll go for a 1-1, but that's my heart. It's certainly not my head.
I don't think that'll do us any favours at this point with Nottingham Forest chasing hard, although saying that they have got Luton on Friday. So we're keeping an eye on them, so to speak. But you've got to hope that the players will respond to especially the defeat against West Brom, the draw at Sheffield United, which was better, but still, in my eyes, to be fair, the referee should have given a penalty for Sheffield United. I know I'm not going to be popular with that, but that's the way I saw it.
So we've really got a form game on Friday, haven't we? We've got 1 point out of 6 at home to no points out of 6. But there's Middlesbrough.
Yes.
We'd won 8 home games on the bounce. We were on the verge against Fulham, albeit a tall order. We were on the verge of creating a new or equaling the number of successive home victories at the Riverside since we went there. And then we've lost 2 on the bounce, So, it was Middlesbrough's home form that was driving them on, not the away form. So maybe after 2, I'm going to change. After 2 home defeats, we're going to go to Bournemouth and win on Friday. 2-1 to the Boro. There you go.
Oh, I hope not, but I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. But I would hope. I'm going to go 2-1, but in our favour. I'm hoping for a response. To be honest, we need a response, Jeff.
I'd rather be in your position and losing at home on Friday than in our position at the moment because points are in the bag. Is the Forest game at Dean Court?
It is, yes.
Yeah. Steve Cooper's done a wonderful job there, and he's come very close on 2 occasions with Swansea. It might be 3rd time lucky for him, but we'll see. It possibly is going to go. Certainly in Bournemouth's case, right to the wire. When do you play Forest?
It's the second from last game of the season. Believe it or not,
you could be up by then.
I hope so. I hope that we can do it in the Blackburn game, which is the week before. The Saturday before. So I'm hoping it'll be then. But the Forest game, believe it or not, it was actually postponed because of Storm Eunice. The Forest fans were very much of the view that we had purposely postponed the game, which is complete and utter rubbish. There was damage to Dean Court, and there was danger to the fans and players. If they played that game, anything could happen. To be honest, I wish we had played them back then.
Because they weren't flying then, were they?
No, and plus, hopefully we would have got the points in the bag. At the moment, that could be a 6-pointer. It could be a 6-pointer if we don't pick up enough results. But I think three wins, would you agree with me, should do it. 82 points should do it.
Yeah, it should do. Because I see Luton. The team that surprised me is Huddersfield. I didn't expect Huddersfield to last the pace. QPR have got a good starting 11, but they haven't got the strength in depth. Luton have surprised a lot of people, but, hand on heart, you would think Luton might fall away. But then if they are going to fall away, somebody's got to get the points to get above them. And, before last Wednesday, we had 2 home games on the bounce. We weren't expecting to get no points. So anything can happen. as long as it's decided on the pitch and not in a, well, it won't be in a VAR studio. Will it?
Yeah, we're looking forward to that next year.
Well, good luck, and I don't want any sarcastic phone call messages from you on Friday afternoon either. If it goes your way.
No, I promise I won't, Jeff. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this show, and all the very best with whatever you put your hand to next. And thank you so much for joining me.
Football this weekend, the great thing about supporting two teams and going to watch two teams is when you have a good weekend, you have a good weekend. When you have a bad weekend, you have a terrible weekend. And I've got Middlesbrough playing Bournemouth and Huddersfield, and Rangers playing, obviously, Braga and then Celtic in the Cup semi-final. So as a Middlesbrough Rangers supporter, the season could be over come Monday. But always remain positive. There could be a cup final, a European semi-final, and Middlesbrough in the playoffs to look forward to. And as fans, all we can ever do is dream and hope and pray. And occasionally it works for you. So best of luck. Maybe not on Friday, but best of luck after that.
Well, you never know. On Monday evening, the season might look even more rosier.
Well, let's hope
That's the way football is.
Let's hope so.
I hope so for us. Thank you so much again, Jeff. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No problem.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
And thank you, everybody, for joining me on this special opposition preview show. Please do remember to hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell button below to be alerted to any new videos we do here on Up the Cherries in all departments. Please do check out our interviews. We've had Harry Redknapp, Steve Cook, Steve Fletcher. We've had David Beckham's agent, Andy Burnell, Beth Powney, Luther Blizzett, Efna Kuku. We've had them all on the show. So please do check those out. We've also had some other really exciting opposition preview guests, so please do check out those, even though the game has gone. Until the next video, up the cherries, and thank you for joining me.